In this video, we're going to be talking about the callout titles pack for DaVinci Resolve by WippTemplates. It includes 20 callout titles that all have a built-in tracker or drag and drop, and you can totally customize the animations. It's a phenomenal pack, so let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and take a look. On my edit page, we're going to be adding callout titles to these 3 clips, so we get a good feel for the pack and you know exactly how to use them. So up in the effects library, we can come down to titles and come down to callout titles under WippTemplates, and we have these 20 titles to choose from. Let's start with callout title 2 and drag this down onto our timeline above our first clip. Right away, this is going to give us a really nice looking callout title, and we can drag this and make it as long or as short as we want to fit our clip. Let's take a look at some of the controls in the inspector. The first thing we have is the anchor. This is where the title is actually going to be at. Right now it is set to the top, meaning the text is going to be above that line. Otherwise, we can set it to bottom, we can set it to left, or we can set it to right. When working with callout titles, it is extremely beneficial to have the viewer controls turned on. So to do that, go down to the bottom left, press this drop down menu, and then click on Fusion Overlay. That's going to turn on the Fusion controls. And with that, you can grab the callout point, you can move the text around, and if you have a shadow turned on, you can also move the drop shadow position. Let's start lining this up. I want the circle to be on the helicopter, and I want my text to be down below here, and I'm going to set the anchor point to be the bottom so the text is below that line. Now when we hit play, it's going to automatically animate on, and we have a really nice callout. The one thing I'd like to do though is track it so that this center point stays attached to that helicopter even as it and the camera move. While you normally have to go into Fusion and use a tracker, it's super easy with the callout titles because they have a tracker built in. Let's move the playhead to the beginning of the title and open up the tracker controls. Before we use these ones, in the viewer controls we have this green box. If you grab that little square up in the top left, we can move this around. This is going to select the tracking point, the area that we're going to track. Once you get that positioned, make sure the solid box only contains the object that you want to track. That is the tracked area. Then the dashed line is the search area. So everything inside of this box is where it's going to search to see where the tracker goes. So if you have a lot of movement in your clip, that does need to be pretty big. But if you don't have a ton of movement, make it a little bit smaller, because then it won't take as long to track. Once you get that positioned, in the tracker controls we have a few different buttons. The first one is track backwards, the middle one is track in both directions, and the last one is track forward. Since we're at the beginning of the clip, let's just hit track forward and let it do its thing. And you can see it does not take that long at all. Once the track finishes, if I hit play, nothing is going to happen right away, and that's because there's a few different ways to actually apply the track inside of the callout titles. The first mode is not applying it at all. That is the default. In this case, we want to switch this to semi-attached. This is only going to attach that center point to our helicopter. And just like that, it is perfectly tracked the first time. These trackers work really good and give you a great result. The other option that you can do is attached. And what this does is moves the entire callout title with the helicopter. So this is really cool, and all of the titles have these same controls built in. A couple of them only have the attach mode, but that's because that's the only thing that would work with the title. But all of them have these trackers built in, and they just work really nice. You also have this offset X and Y points to move the actual callout. Keep in mind, I would not move this too far away from the helicopter or the original track point, because even if the perspective's just a little off, it'll look like it's not being perfectly tracked. Now, if your track messed up or you need to start over, you can always hit this reset tracker, and that's going to delete all the tracking information and let you start from the beginning. Once we have a good track, let's close the tracker controls and come up to the text. We're going to change this to be helicopter. When I type in there, you can see this line automatically updates to make sure all of the text fits. And down here we can change the size, we can change the tracking, color, font, everything that we need. We can even change the text padding, so how far it is away from the line, and this is all going to update the animations, so that way it goes away at the end. Under point controls, this is going to be the same in all of the callout titles, which is really nice because there's a lot of different stuff that we can do. The first thing is the point style. We can set this to be none, so it deletes the point, solid, so that there is just a solid circle, outline, and dot. Under each of these other modes, there's stuff like the point size. We can change the corner radius to turn it into a square, as well as the spacing to determine how much of a gap there is between the point and the callout line. For this case, let's set it to outline, change the thickness, and make sure that this is still at a circle. Back under the tracker controls, I'm going to move this offset down so it is in the center of the helicopter. If you want, you can also change the color, but I'm just going to jump down to the line controls. This one allows us to change the thickness, we can extend the line by the helicopter text, and we can also reverse the line animation. By default, it's going to draw from the callout point, so the circle is going to come up and the line is going to draw from the helicopter. But if we hit reverse, the text and the other line are going to draw first, and then the line is going to go from our text to the helicopter. Again, really cool that we can change all of that with just one click inside of the inspector. Let's jump down to the shadow controls. By hitting enable, we can add in a drop shadow, and using the softness, we can change the intensity and even add an offset to change how the shadow itself looks. Let's do something like that for the shadow. Underneath the anim engine, this is where it gets really cool. The animation engine is integrated into all of the title packs and editor titles, and it allows us to do stuff like turn the animations off, so we can turn in animation off but still have it animate out at the end, or vice versa, turn them all off, and we can change how long the animations take. So right now they're set to 2 seconds, but if I want, I can set it to be 1 second, so it only takes a second to animate on. I can also switch it to the custom mode, so that way it takes 2 seconds to animate on, but then only 1 second to animate off. It is really cool, all the customization that we have. And then down here we have the overlap, and that's because there's 2 animations going on. If we look at this, we have the line drawing and then the text coming out. If we set the overlap to be 1, everything's going to animate on at exactly the same time. The helicopter text is going to come down as soon as it starts drawing the line. If we set the overlap to be 0, that means the line is going to draw and then the text will come down. So I like putting it somewhere in the middle so that way the text starts coming down as the line is still being drawn. And then finally we have this curve control, so we can change the actual easing that is on the animation. So if you just switch this to be easing, you have these different drop down menus to totally customize that. Let's add in another one to this clip. We're going to add modern title 1 and drag this down. Let's have this one start a little bit in from the clip and end a little bit before the clip itself actually ends. I'm going to track this right away, so I'm going to grab my tracker and I'm going to position it on this power line. Now this is a little bit of a difficult track because you can see the clouds behind it, but if you watch, Fusion does an amazing job tracking stuff, so we're going to position it like this. Come to the tracker controls and use the track forward and backwards since I'm in the middle of the clip. Then I'm going to set this to be semi-attached, and as we hit play, you can see we're going to have a phenomenal track even for it being a difficult thing to deal with. Let's go up to the text and switch this to be power lines, and then come down to the bar controls where we can change the color. I'm going to double click on this box and then use this pick screen color button to choose a nice orange over here that's going to really fit well in with our scene. And just in a few seconds, we have this really nice looking callout title that is tracked in our scene and all the colors match, and yeah, it's just really cool how easy these are to use. As one final one, I'm going to use callout title number 7, and I'm going to extend this out so it is the full length of the clip. And with this one, it just has a line that draws out with some text that slides up. Let's use the tracker to attach it to these buildings over here. So I'm going to track this little spot that comes out. So I'm going to do the same thing I did with the power lines, make our search box a little bit bigger, come to the tracker controls, and then do a bi-directional track. But once we hit play, you can see we're going to have an awesome track once again. So we can go in here and change the text. In the line controls, we can make it so it's longer, so it extends out. But doing this type of title on a shot like this just gives it a really cool look and makes it feel like the title is actually in the scene. One thing to keep in mind about the callout titles, sometimes the bi-directional tracking glitches out a little bit in DaVinci Resolve. So if you have that it looks good on one side but then messes up on the other, just start from the beginning of the clip and do a track forward, and that's going to get you a good result almost every time. You can buy callout titles on their own or as part of the editor titles bundle, which is definitely the way that I would recommend going since you get 270 titles that are built to the same quality as these ones. You can find out more information about all these linked down below, and if you have any questions, please let me know.